Having well-developed lats is a huge benefit for building someone's physique, giving that highly desired V-taper look. Unfortunately, many people make a lot of mistakes in training their lats, choosing poor exercises, using technique that doesn't optimally hit them, and overall not developing them. To address this, we want to understand the lat's anatomy, its functions, the regional differences of the lats, their biomechanical functions, and how to practically apply this information. The latissimus dorsi, aka the lats, is one of the largest muscles in the body. It originates on the pelvis, sacrum, lumbar vertebrae, and lower ribs, spanning across the low and mid back, crossing the shoulder, and then inserting on the intertubercular groove of the upper arm bone. Due to these origins and insertions, the lats have three primary functions. Shoulder adduction, bringing the arm down by your side from overhead. Shoulder extension, bringing the arm down in front of you from overhead. And shoulder internal rotation, rotating the arm from outside to in towards your body. In addition to these three functions, the lats also assist in horizontal abduction, where the arm comes from midline out to our side. But they aren't very effective here compared to other muscles. So when we look to work the lats to our best abilities, we are usually looking to do so with movements where we can bring our elbows in tight to our body, particularly at the end position. Beyond just those shoulder motions, the lats also assist us in extension of the lower back when they contract bilaterally, and lateral flexion and rotation of the spine when they contract unilaterally. The lats have been subdivided into three regions: the thoracic or upper region, lumbar or middle region, and pelvic or lower region. The superior region assists in shoulder extension, whereas the middle and lower regions assist more in shoulder adduction. As such, it will be ideal to have exercises that emphasize each of these motions. It's important that we also look at where the lats work best in these ranges and are worked most in these ranges compared to other muscles, which also assist in these motions. When looking at shoulder extension, the lats have the most optimal ability to generate force around 45 to 60 degrees of shoulder flexion. As you go higher, their leverages decrease. At the highest degrees of shoulder extension, only the inferior region of the lats has the leverage to contribute to shoulder extension. For shoulder adduction, the lats are best able to generate force around 65 to 75 degrees of shoulder abduction. The upper region decreases first, and then the other two regions follow, with the lower region still contributing at upper regions slightly. Alright, let's start looking at some specific exercises. When it comes to developing the lats, we have two main categories of compound movements: vertical pulls and horizontal pulls. Let's start with vertical pulls. The first exercise many people think about when looking to develop lats is the pull-up. Pull-ups are a phenomenal exercise overall, and if you look at any gymnast, you're going to see well-developed lats. However, while pull-ups are one of my favorite exercises and can work the lats fairly well, if your goal is to dial in on the lats, they may not be the best option, as they have a few limitations when it comes to maximally growing the lats. Firstly, in the fully overhead position, the lats aren't able to very effectively contribute. Instead, you're working other muscles such as the posterior deltoid, traps, pecs, etc. Secondly, they're an exercise which can often be limited by other muscles such as the trunk, biceps, and your forearm muscles. So while you can use them to develop a Christmas tree for a back, there might be better options in your pursuit of lats. The lat pull down is another classic vertical pull and does bode a bit more in line with these goals. Since you're able to anchor yourself down, it reduces the trunk demand. As well, by being anchored down, you can use momentum to initiate the movement and get into the range where the lats are going to be truly loaded. You wouldn't want to take the momentum to an extreme, but it can help to ensure that the lats are not limited by the top range. As you do the movement, focus on bringing your elbows in tight and down. That way we get into as much adduction and extension as we can. Now the lat pull down as shown is a pretty solid option for working the lats, but there are some other ways that we can modify to get even more out of the lats. Going to a single arm option might be more effective. When doing a single arm, you'll have the ability to change your hand position more and find the position where you feel your lats working best. It also lets you get into more adduction and extension of the bottom position, which is beneficial. As well, we can also incorporate some of the spinal motion that we discussed earlier into the picture. This can be a very effective option for hitting the lats. If you don't have a cable or seated lat pull down setup, you can also play around with a half kneeling band version. This can hit the lats fairly well, especially when you're limited on equipment options. When we transition to the horizontal row category, most people have the bent over row come to mind. This exercise has been a staple of many bodybuilding and strength programs. Much like the pull-up, it's a solid exercise and does work the lats, but it has some room for improvement if our goal is to bolster the best set of lats that we can. Firstly, the bent over row can often be limited by the lower back, so going to some kind of supported option is going to be really beneficial when trying to hit the lats. That's where the seal row comes in. The seal row is great since it gives us that chest support, stopping the back from limiting us, and allows us a really good range of motion to be worked through. Doing it with dumbbells might be better since it allows us to get a nice squeeze at the top, really hone in on both max adduction and extension. You could rotate through different blocks of training where you emphasize a bit more strength and utilize the barbell, and then you go through a different block where you emphasize the dumbbells and try to really hone in on that squeeze and range of motion. As well, if you can get the feet side of the bench elevated slightly so it's a bit of a downward angle, that will enhance the range of where we hit the lats with peak tension. Now those two are likely going to be the two best overall options for hitting lats, particularly when you combine them since they're going to be working different ranges and angles, which can be beneficial. However, there are some other notable exercises I do want to highlight. The 3-point dumbbell row or bench row is a phenomenal exercise for hitting the lats as well. Since we can use some momentum in the bottom to get it started, having the lats work through their peak range and have a bit of spinal motion, it's a really solid option. If you want more of a breakdown on it, we did a whole video detailing the technique on this, and I'll link it down in the description box below. The chest supported row is another one that I really like and can be a great option if you have a lot of vertical pulling in a program, since it emphasizes more of that bottom range of motion. It's a really stable option that works the lats hard. One last compound exercise I wanted to cover is a really solid option, particularly if you're limited down to just one lat exercise, and it's going to be the high to low row. This is a pseudo vertical and horizontal pull and works the lats along their line of pull really well. Ideally, we have the shoulders flexed to around 120 degrees at the top, and then as you pull back, you try to minimize leaning backwards, instead focusing on squeezing the lats hard. You can play around with your body angle to see if you find that leaning forward slightly actually enhances that mind-muscle connection of the lats. As well, you can experiment with having a chest support forward, as this can enhance your ability to focus in on the lats and not be limited with body motion. If you use an incline bench, you can adjust the angle and try to find a position that's optimal for maximal tension in your lats. Now, in addition to these compound movements, we can also do some isolation type movements. The first one might surprise some people, but it's a deadlift. When we do deadlifts, we have our lats work on spinal extension, supporting our back position, but we also do active shoulder extension to keep the bar close. Doing challenging deadlifts will help build the lats and be beneficial when done in a comprehensive program with horizontal and vertical pulls. The second one is a pullover. There are various ways you can do pullovers. The dumbbell pullover is a popular one, but it's actually not a great lat exercise. Again, since your lats work best at around 120 degrees and below, that top range of motion is going to be more posterior delt, pecs, etc. Instead, doing a standing cable or band pullover will be a better option for lat-focused isolation. You can start at around 120 degrees of shoulder flexion by being bent over, and then as you pull through, come to a more upright position to hit more of that end range. Overall, you'll be best off emphasizing compound movements and just sprinkling in these as you feel needed. Now, people often have questions in regards to executing these movements that I wanted to cover. For instance, grip width. How wide should you actually hold? Is wider better? Well, it depends. From an activation standpoint, it doesn't really seem to matter. Anderson et al. Compared 3 grips, 1 times bioacromial distance, 1.5 times bioacromial distance, and 2 times bioacromial distance during an overhand pull down. They found there wasn't a significant difference in activation of lats between the 3 grips. However, generally if we take a wider grip, we work through less range of motion for the lats, which is likely not ideal. So more often than not, utilizing a middle grip position is probably going to be best, somewhere where your elbows are in line with your ribs. What about forearm orientation? Should you go pronated or supinated? Well, Lusk et al. Tested a wide and narrow grip similar to the Anderson study, but they also incorporated pronated and supinated grips for each. Just like the Anderson study, they saw similar lat recruitment between a wide and narrow grip, but they saw that using an overhand grip resulted in significantly more activation than the supinated grip. Now, I will say that while that's what most of the research indicates, if someone finds that they're able to get better extension and adduction with the supinated grip, which many bodybuilders will argue, then that's possible that it could be superior. As well, a study from Udis et al. Did find that the supinated grip was superior on an inverted row for lat activation. So it may be a case where for lat pull-downs, an overhand grip is superior, and on rows, an underhand grip may be superior. An important note that we want to discuss is for beginners, it's important to learn which muscles are being focused on and actually trying to purposely use these muscles during the movements. Snyder et al. 2009 looked at how giving beginners cues on performing the lat pull-down changed their muscle recruitment pattern. And so that when instructed and taught how to use the lats, individuals had an increase in lat involvement and a decrease in biceps. This is an important takeaway for both training the lats and all exercises. Our mechanics are important, but it's also valuable to think about which muscles we're actually trying to execute with and how we actually want to try to use them to the best of our abilities. Hopefully this video helped you out in understanding the best lat exercises and how you get more out of training your lats. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe for more videos in the future. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.